There comes a time, silent, often painful, when the soul whispers, "Begin again." It may come as a heartbreak, a loss, a crisis, or simply a quiet ache beneath your routines. But when the call to reset your life stirs within you, know this: it is not madness. It is initiation. What you call a reset is the soul's demand to return to what is true. In 6 months, you can either deepen your illusion or awaken. Let us choose awakening. You were never meant to spend your life wearing a mask that doesn't even belong to you. Yet somewhere along the way, maybe in childhood, maybe in the silent expectations of others, you began to shape yourself into something acceptable. You smiled when it hurt. You nodded when your soul whispered no. You became agreeable, competent, productive, anything but real, and for a time it worked. The world applauded the version of you that kept the peace, played the part, and asked for nothing more than external validation. But beneath that well-crafted persona is a self that never stopped aching. It is quiet but relentless. It shows up in your anxiety, your exhaustion, your resentment at the life you built that doesn't feel like it belongs to you. And if you do not burn this false self intentionally, life will eventually do it for you. It may come as a breakdown, a relationship that collapses, a career that turns to dust, a sudden, terrifying emptiness in the middle of success. Life, like the soul, has no tolerance for deception that goes on too long. To burn the false self is not an act of destruction. It is an act of devotion. It is the return to essence, to a truth that was buried beneath layers of survival. This fire does not harm what is real. It only devours what is dead. And you will have to face what you've spent years avoiding: the fear of rejection, the grief of old roles, the unfamiliarity of living without a script. But the cost of keeping the mask on is far greater. It costs your vitality, your peace, your purpose. It keeps you in relationships that are convenient but lifeless. It keeps you in jobs that pay you to abandon yourself. The false self is clever. It is polite. It fits in. It follows rules. But it has no soul. And you were not born to be a performance. You were born to be a presence. So begin, not by becoming someone new, but by peeling away who you never were. Speak the truth you've been afraid to say. Walk away from what drains you. Rest when you feel guilt. Say no when it shakes your voice. This is how you begin to reset your life, not by addition, but by subtraction. The world doesn't need another perfectly sculpted image. It needs a living, breathing soul willing to stand naked in their truth. And that begins the moment you no longer fear the fire. Let it come, let it burn. What survives is what was always you. You cannot reset your life while avoiding the very place where your life first fractured. The wound you keep suppressing is not just pain. It is a doorway. It is a map drawn in blood and silence, showing you exactly where the soul was once abandoned, where innocence was traded for survival, where the mask was first fastened to your face. And as long as you refuse to go there, as long as you stay distracted, busy, numbed, you will keep orbiting the same patterns, meeting the same failures dressed in new forms, choosing comfort over freedom. You must understand, your wound is not your enemy, it is your oracle. The sorrow you carry, the shame you never speak of, the rage that bursts out when no one's watching. These are not malfunctions, they are messages. But the ego hates pain. It wants to rise, to improve, to skip the underworld entirely. It wants to bypass grief, label trauma as the past, and cover it all in positivity. Yet you cannot heal what you will not face. And you cannot face what you continue to name as weakness. There is no transformation without descent. If you want to reset your life in 6 months, go backward, not into old behaviors, but into buried truths. Sit with the version of you who was never heard. Listen to the silence in your childhood that screamed louder than words. Ask yourself, what hurt me that I still haven't named? What moment split me from myself? Where did I learn that love must be earned, that rest must be justified, that emotion must be hidden? Go to that place, stay there, not to drown, but to remember. In the beginning, it will feel like dying. Your defenses will panic, your mind will distract, your body may shake. But if you stay with the wound, if you tend to it like a sacred altar instead of a battlefield, something miraculous happens, clarity emerges. You begin to see the story behind your patterns. You recognize that the enemy was never life. It was the unspoken memory ruling it from the shadows. And from that awareness, a new path unfolds, a map. Not to who you are told to be, but to who you truly are beneath the armor. 6 months is not too short a time to change your life. It is only too short to keep running, because the moment you dare to face the wound is the moment the wound begins to guide you. It will not be easy, but it will be sacred, and the person who rises on the other side will not just be healed, they will be whole. Envy is one of the most misunderstood emotions. We're taught to feel ashamed of it, to suppress it, to judge it as proof of our inadequacy or moral failure. But envy, if approached with honesty and reverence, is not a poison. It is a revelation. It is the voice of your unlived life, whispering from the shadows, "There is more for you than this." When you feel that aching jealousy towards someone else's life, it is not because they are ahead of you. It is because they are embodying something you have not yet dared to claim. Envy is not petty, it is precise, it doesn't arise randomly, it is targeted. You do not envy everything in someone else, you envy something specific. A kind of freedom, a kind of visibility, a kind of expression, a kind of love, and if you trace that thread all the way back to its root, you will often find a buried dream or a suppressed identity, something vital that was exiled long ago. Envy reveals the parts of yourself you've disowned out of fear, duty, or trauma. Most people either act on envy destructively or suppress it entirely. They gossip, compare, sabotage, or convince themselves they never wanted that thing anyway. But this is a spiritual bypass. The mature soul does not waste envy. It studies it, it listens, it leans in, because hidden in that discomfort is direction. That flash of jealousy when you see someone speak their truth without apology. That's your voice asking to be reclaimed. That longing you feel watching someone live without fear of judgment. That's your own inner wildness begging to be freed. To reset your life in 6 months, you must treat envy like sacred data, not with shame, but with curiosity. What is this feeling trying to show me? What part of myself is starving in silence? What have I denied because it was too bold, too risky, too different from what I was taught to value? The answers will not be easy, but they will be honest. And honesty is where all real transformation begins. Do not assume that what you envy belongs only to others. It lives within you too, or it would not have stirred your soul in the first place. The seed is already planted. You're simply being called to water it. And this will require courage. It will mean disrupting the version of yourself that everyone has grown comfortable with. It will mean risking rejection, stepping out of roles, disappointing those who benefit from your smallness. But the cost of staying envious is far greater than the cost of becoming who you are. So let envy guide you, not to imitation, but to revelation. Let it show you what you desire, what you admire, what you were born to express. And then, for 6 months, commit to moving toward it. Not perfectly, not all at once, but with intention. Let every step be a quiet rebellion against the life you settled for. Because the version of you that lives behind envy isn't just a fantasy. It is your potential waiting to be remembered. Discipline is not punishment. It is not self-denial for its own sake, nor is it a rigid system of control meant to keep you from pleasure or rest. Discipline, in its truest form, is an act of love, a devotion to the future self that already knows who you are capable of becoming. It is a sacred agreement between who you are now and who you are meant to be. When you reset your life, discipline becomes the thread that ties your intention to your transformation. We often wait for motivation to arrive like a lightning bolt. But motivation is fleeting. It rises and falls with mood, with weather, with the stories we tell ourselves about what is possible. Discipline does not ask how you feel, it asks what you value. And if you want your life to be different in 6 months, you must learn to act not from fleeting desire, but from deeper alignment. Discipline is not suppression, it is remembrance. It remembers what you said you wanted when you were clear, before fear and fatigue crept in. This is why it must be anchored in meaning. If discipline is only about performance or external validation, it will eventually collapse under the weight of resentment. But if discipline is born from devotion to your growth, your healing, your purpose, it becomes sustainable. It becomes a practice, a prayer, a form of self-respect. You begin to wake up early not because someone told you to, but because you want to greet your own becoming. You choose stillness over distraction not because it is trendy, but because your soul is hungry for depth. You say no to things that waste your energy, because every time you say yes to what drains you, you say no to who you could be. The world will not pause for your transformation. It will keep spinning. It will keep seducing you with noise and comfort and shortcuts, but your future self is watching, that version of you, the one who is grounded, joyful, powerful, clear. That version is not born by accident. It is built in the choices you make daily, especially when no one is watching. Every time you show up for yourself, even in small ways, you are laying a brick in the foundation of the life you are constructing. Every time you keep your word, you are repairing the trust between your soul and your actions, and you will fall, you will forget, you will sabotage. This too is part of the process. Discipline is not perfection, it is return. The return to the vow, the return to the path, the return to the vision that burns too brightly in your bones to ignore. So for 6 months, become devoted, not obsessed, devoted. Rise with intention, work with care. Rest with reverence, feed your mind, move your body, create what you long to see in the world, not to prove your worth, but to embody it. This is how discipline becomes holy. This is how a new life is built. One choice, one moment, one sacred act of devotion at a time. The most powerful prison is not made of bars or walls. It is made of old stories. The narratives you've told yourself for years. I'm not worthy. I always fail. No one truly sees me. I don't belong. Have become the invisible scripts directing your every move. These are not harmless thoughts. They are enchantments, spells cast in moments of pain, shame, or abandonment. You didn't create them from truth. You created them to survive. And now, if you truly desire to reset your life in 6 months, you must be willing to die to these stories. Not gently, not theoretically, but completely. The human psyche clings to familiarity, even when it is painful. You would rather wear the identity that suffocates you than face the unknown silence that comes when the old one dies. But the path to transformation always begins with a funeral. The death of who you thought you were, the burial of what no longer serves, the shedding of an identity that was only ever provisional. This is not self-betrayal. It is self-liberation. Your past is not your destiny. Your trauma is not your name. Your mistakes are not your soul. They are pages in a chapter that must now end, and ending it is not denial. It is acknowledgement. You name the lie so that you may walk into truth. You say, I am not broken. I was conditioned to feel unworthy. You say, I am not too late. I am right on time for my own becoming. You say, I am not what happened to me. I am who I choose to become in response to it. But this shift is not intellectual. It is cellular. It must be lived. You cannot simply affirm a new identity while behaving like the old one. The way you walk, speak, commit, rest, create, all of it must align with the self you are stepping into. This means you will disappoint those who only knew the old version of you. It means you will be tempted to shrink back into what is familiar. But the reset requires risk. And the greatest risk is becoming fully alive in a world that taught you to be half of yourself. Ask yourself, who am I when I am not performing? Who am I when I stop explaining, apologizing, and pretending? Who am I when I stop identifying with wounds and start creating from wisdom? Let that version of you rise, not because the old one was wrong, but because it has served its purpose. Its time is over, honor it, then bury it, ritualize the death if you must, write the old story down, read it aloud, and burn it. Let it return to ash, and from that ash begin again. 6 months from now, your life can look entirely different, not because the world around you changed, but because you did. Because you stopped rehearsing your old identity and began rehearsing the truth. You are not who you were. You never were, not really. That story was a dream. necessary for a time but no longer true. Now is the time to wake up. Now is the time to become.